To update you a little bit, last week, we've been going this way, we went back that way and looked a little bit into the lives of Jacob and his sons and some of the treachery they had done and what, that it wasn't a big surprise what they did to Joseph. We talked about how Levi and Simeon deceived Shechem and had them all circumcised and went over there while they were healing up and killed the whole city. How Reuben went into Jacob's, really technically his stepmother, and had relations with her. And then of course Judah's role we talked about a few weeks ago when he went in, thought he was going with a prostitute, which was actually his daughter-in-law, and had a grandchild in a sense through his daughter-in-law, which was also his son. So his sons had quite a resume. In contrast, definitely Joseph was going through difficult times. He was 17 when he was captured and 30 when he was sent to the role of next to Pharaoh. So that was 13 years of some difficult times. But now it's about 10 years into it, and Joseph has everything he wants. He's, next to the Pharaoh, and in a sense, the Pharaoh gives him final say. So he's almost ruling the world. He's got a beautiful wife, 2 sons, but as we said last week, he has thoughts of home and what, never can forget the things that happened to him. So now we see that the Lord has been working on his brothers and family back home and is about to accomplish his plan. So let's look into Genesis 42. Now 2 weeks ago we left off with Genesis 41 when Joseph had been promoted. They had the 7 years of prosperity. He had stocked up all the grain, and now we were into the famine and people were starting to come. And what does Pharaoh say? Go to Joseph, he'll tell you what to do. So Joseph is basically running the known world at that time, because Egypt is probably the main place. So let's look at the events today. And back in Canaan, well, things couldn't be any better for Joseph, for his brothers and his father. It couldn't be any worse. All right, so let's begin. Jacob sends his sons to Egypt. Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why do you look one upon another? It kind of makes it sound like they were just sitting there sulking, where we going to do here?
Living Testament or what?
King James today.
King James today.
God's version today.
Amen.
That's what my Bible is.
All right.
And he said, verse 2, behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down hither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came for the famine was in the land of Canaan. All right. You can tell by the language, there's despair and gloom. They're running out of food. It's not like today, you don't have like organizations and charities and stuff like that. You're on your own, and if the food was going, you would die. They hear there's grain in Egypt. Little did they know, right, what was the source of the grain. The question arises, why did he just send 10 sons? All right, first of all, his beloved Rachel, he had 2 sons by that. Joseph, who as far as he knew was dead, and Benjamin. So he wasn't going to let anything harm Benjamin. And you also have to look at the fact that what happened the last time he sent his other son to his brothers. He never came back. Maybe deep inside of him, he always thought, were they the ones who done this to Joseph? And maybe he just didn't trust them with him, especially because probably the favoritism that Jacob was putting on Joseph, he was now putting on Benjamin. So that's the case. So he sends all 10 of them down to Egypt to buy grain. So then it's just Jacob and Benjamin just sitting there and have to wait. Today's terms, it wouldn't take long, but I'm sure then it took several days to get from Canaan to Egypt, maybe weeks, and plus they have to get back. So it's just a waiting game. No clue what's going on. Now, verse 6 and 7. Joseph's brothers bound. And Joseph was governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan, to buy food. All right. Now, not to quote secular songs, I think there's a song by Phil Collins. I never knew it meant, I thought he meant in a good way as a song. I've been waiting for this moment all my life. It's about tonight he's going to find, I guess, revenge on an ex-lover or something. Can you imagine Joseph? All right, Joseph, let me see, it's been over 20 years now. I imagine his thoughts of telling his dream that all the stalks bowed down to me, and his brothers laughed at it. All the stars and the moon bowed to me, and even his father, who loved him up somewhat, rebuked him. Imagine how many years in that dungeon as he was saying, Lord, what are you doing here? And the Lord said, remember your dream. And you know, it happened then. And then you just imagine, so he's seeing people day after day from nations all over the world, all races and groups. And then all of a sudden, he sees all 10 of them. And, you know, what are the thoughts that come to his mind? First of all, I was saying, Lord, you're faithful. You said this would happen. It's been a long day, but here they are at last. And just imagine what kind of person Joseph is, because he has he can do anything he wants to. He could say the word, and their heads would be on a stick in a few minutes if he wanted to. Imagine the hurt they caused him, the separation from his family. But he sits there and looks at them, and being, you know, the Lord has taught him patience and how to rule and lead. And so he has to begin a process of saying, let's see what's happened, what's going on in my brother's lives. So remember his brothers now. So we've last seen Joseph when he was 17, probably maybe, you know, some peach fuzz on him and transitioning from a boy to a man. Now he's a full-grown man, probably with his head shaved and that Egyptian eye makeup on, and maybe a covering on his head, so they don't recognize him at all. Whereas him, basically they were adults because they were all older than him. They probably haven't changed much, just aged a little bit, and he's easily, and in their same clothing, so he's easily recognizable to them. So, and also he's up there speaking another language. So if you say you sold your brother in slavery, and you went to Mexico and went in there, and there's a man speaking to you, maybe in fluent Spanish, well, you have no idea that that's your brother-in-law. So they're totally clueless. So Joseph has them where he wants. So let's see Joseph's reaction to his brothers. And I wrote the term harsh in parentheses. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land, ye are come. And they said unto him, Nay, nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. So as you think of that, even as good as Joseph was, it would be hard to think he was not enjoying that a little bit, because they know he has the power to, to send them away empty-handed, kill them right now or kill them slowly, and they're just at his mercy, and he just speaks bluntly to them. But you think yourself, is Joseph doing this just out of spite? That's against his character. If he's doing something, it's for a reason why he's speaking harshly to him. And they said unto him, Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's sons, we are true men. Thy servants are no spies. And he said unto them, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said, Thy servants are 12 brethren. I imagine this is when it hit Joseph, and he got a soft spot here. The sons of one man in the land of Canaan, and behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. Imagine, first he was thinking, where's Benjamin? Is my father still alive? And then when he said that, I imagine just something that hit him side. My father's still alive, and so is my brother Benjamin, the one who was probably close with, the one who didn't betray him. And Joseph said unto them, that it is us, verse 13, they said, Thy servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan, and behold, thy youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. Little did they know that one is not is the one they were talking to. And Joseph said unto them, that I spake unto you, saying, Ye are spies. Hereby ye shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither, come here. Send one of you, and let him fetch your brother, and ye shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. And he put them all together into ward 3 days. So Joseph has said, here's what you're going to do. I'm going to keep 9 of you. One of you is going to go back and bring this supposed brother and see if you're telling the truth. Now to them, they probably are thinking, what kind of crazy request is this? But little did they know, Joseph is hatching a plan. Like I said, what is Joseph doing? Is he doing vengeance? This is not in the character of Joseph. It certainly would be justified, but that's not what he's doing here. He's beginning to test and see if these brothers who acted so cruelly to him 20 years ago have changed as a person. Now, it's also ironic. It was the 10 who betrayed him and basically sent him away to prison. Now he's putting all 10 of them in prison. And he puts, as they put him into a pit into slavery, now he puts into prison and begins to put his plan into place. So he sets them on prison night, and I imagine they're all sitting in there in jail thinking, saying, you know, we would just have stayed home and figured something out. Now, not only were we starving, and now, just Benjamin at home, now all 10 of us are here. If our father doesn't send him, we're doomed. We're all going to be in prison the rest of our life. They're probably saying, I'm thinking it could have got any worse in Canaan, but we came into Egypt and it's actually gotten worse. But then we see what begins to transpire the next day. So Joseph goes and visits us in prison, and then just imagine his brothers are going to be in the middle of a conversation here. And if Joseph comes in, this is a guy who they think is speaking whatever the Egyptian language is, and they think he has no clue what they're saying, and no idea what their conversation is. Verse 18. And Joseph said unto them the 3rd day, so they've been in jail 3 days, This do and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses. So in other words, his initial plan was he was going to keep 9 of them and send 1 back. Now he's just going to keep 1 and send the other 9 back. Verse 20, But bring your youngest brethren to me, so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. And they said one to another. All right, so now he's given them this deal. They're probably thinking, well, this is not as bad. At least all of us get to go, except 1. But we have this issue of convincing Jacob to let Benjamin come back down with us. And so here's what I'm thinking Joseph is thinking, how are they going to treat Benjamin? Are they going to treat him like they did me? So Joseph is trying to see what's going on. Verse 21, And they said one to another, We are verily guilty concerning our brother, and that we saw the anguish of his soul, when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against a child, and ye would not hear? Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spoke unto them by an interpreter. And he turned himself about from them and wept, and returned to them again, and communed with them, and took from them Simeon, and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn, and to restore every man's money into his sack, and to give them provision for the way, and thus did he unto them. All right, so see the stuff going on there. So Joseph is sitting there, and then he hears the brothers talking forth to each other, basically confessing their sins out loud, showing that they regretted this, showing this probably for the last 20 years they've been living with this, and he's overcome by emotion, and he just leaves and has to, go cry. One, the pain, the memories of this horrible event that happened to him, maybe after having resentment to his brothers, sees that they truly regretted this, and it's just an overwhelming moment. And just a funny thing, he knows every single thing, and they're sitting there clueless, knowing that the one that they're talking about, who they think's long dead, is standing right there next to them. And now all these strange things begin to happen to them, and they're saying, what in the world is going on here? You know, Joseph commands also that all the money that they had paid for the grain, and all the money, this has come from the savings of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to pay that. He said, put it all back in there. So the plan is beginning development. Also, one more thing, who did Joseph keep back there? Simeon. Remember last week we talked about him and Levi were the ringleaders of the attack on Shechem. I'm thinking maybe Simeon perhaps was the leader of the group to put Joseph to rise up, and even perhaps thought of killing him. They talked them out of that. Reuben was the oldest, and he was sympathetic, wanted to spare the boy's life. Simeon's second born, and I'm thinking he was probably the ringleader of this plan to take down Joseph, and that might be the reason why Joseph kept him. He was the one that kept him there. So now here's the situation. So all 10 brothers are set up, said, well, it's good in a sense. We've got plenty of food. We're loaded up. We're going back home, but we went down with 10 brothers, and now it's only 9. We have got to convince our father to let Benjamin down. And I'm sure, if there was a raft and it was Jacob, Simeon, and Benjamin, and there was two lifesavers, Simeon was probably going to be the odd man out, so they're probably thinking, well, we can go live off this grain. And then Jacob says, that's it, I'm not sending Benjamin back, and we'll never see Simeon again. So they've got a task ahead of them. So they begin this long journey back and saying, let's see what Father's thinking. In the meantime, Joseph is patiently waiting. They're not driving to Salisbury tomorrow. This is going to take days to get down there, and weeks, and then even for this grain to run out, and for them to convince Jacob. But Joseph has a man of patience. He's been in jail. He's been sold into slavery. He knows how to wait patiently, and he knows he's had a dream from God. And he didn't just have a dream that 10 stalks bow before him. He had a dream 12, all his brothers, including his father as well. So we wait for the plan to come into motion. All right, verses 26 to 28. And again, we talk about Joseph had some hard times in those 13 years in prison, but his brothers over the next 20 plus years, I'd argue that their life was maybe even worse, and we see this here. And they laded their asses with the corn and departed thence. King James here, so that means donkeys. That means they're sorry rear. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender in the inn, he espied his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. So they were stopping on this long journey, so each night they probably stopped in the inn on the road. And he said unto his brethren, my money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, listen to this, what is this that God hath done unto us? So they're living in condemnation and guilt. They think they're probably just thinking the Lord just mysteriously put that money back in there to punish them. So Joseph and his army is going to come back and get them. And it just shows their constant feeling of condemnation, of the guilt that they're carrying. And they've just been carrying it for 20 plus years, this horrible thing they've done to the brother. And they're just so interested, once again, being totally clueless, thinking these are all random things, or God is doing stuff supernatural, which he is in a sense, but like the grain appearing, and his brother, or this man that they seen giving this crazy demand of why does he care? He's the ruler of the world. Why does he care how many brothers we have? And why does he want to see our other brother? They're just thinking it's the Lord's punishing them, putting this on them. So it shows that they know what they did was wrong, and they're living with the guilt of this. So when they see this, they pack up everything, and let's hightail it back to Canaan. And before they notice it, maybe they don't know where we live at, and they won't be able to find us, so they head back home. So they go back. And just imagine Jacob, miserable, sitting there with just Benjamin, all the camps gone, food disappearing each day. And I just wanted to emphasize how his life just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. Little did he know what's just ahead of him in the next few months. So here comes a caravan again. And imagine, at first he's good, he's glad to see them. Then he goes 1, 2, 3%, and sees that Simeon's missing. What's happened? He's glad to see the grain. He wants to know what's happened to Simeon. And I imagine Reuben or Judah is probably one of the leaders and say, all right, here's the deal. And begins to explain to Jacob. We'll talk about this here. And the brothers return to Jacob, verses 29 to 35. And they came unto Jacob their father into the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell to them, saying, the man who is the Lord of the land spake roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. And we said unto him, we are true men, we are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our fathers, one is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan, which Joseph was saying is mine. One is not, one is, but you just don't know who he is. Verse 33, and the man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, hereby shall I know that you are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take food for the famine of your households, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother unto me, then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you your brother, and ye shall traffic in the land. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. So they tell Jacob the whole story, show him all the money's back, and it says here they're afraid. They're saying, oh no, what is going to happen now? So we haven't just, went to some big landowner. We've gone to the ruler of Egypt and come back with the money. So it's basically almost like they've conceived a plan to steal things. And are they going to come down, chase us, wipe us out? And imagine Jacob is thinking again, what next? But now also, these are the patriarchs. This is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These are men of faith. And maybe, deep down, in spite of everything's going wrong, they're saying, Lord, I'm holding on to the promise that you gave my family. For some reason that I don't know, you chose our family to work your plan, to bring your nation, who would eventually bring his son, and the plan of salvation. But imagine they're thinking, what next can go wrong? So, let's close out the chapter and then comment on setting the stage of what is happening here. Final 3 verses are just interesting to see. Notice the caption. I love that caption there, because that's what it appears, and it's a complete opposite. And Jacob their father, in a moment of frustration and grief, said unto them, me have you bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not. So he thinks Joseph is dead. He thinks Simeon is as good as dead. And you will take Benjamin away. So now they want to take his beloved Benjamin with him. And he says, and then he might not see him again. And he makes a comment, all these things are against me. I remember years ago, Rob Morgan spoke on this subject, or when he was talking about it, and he said, all is against me. He said, no, he said, everything's working for you. It just seems that in the eye. So that's how we can need to take heart when everything seems to be on the complete opposite of what the Lord needs to be doing, and the exact opposite is happening. And here, as the chapter closes out, we begin to see the change in his brothers. Listen to what Reuben, the oldest, says, verse 37. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him to thee again. Reuben saying, give us Benjamin, and I guarantee you I will bring him back. You can kill my 2 sons if I don't bring him back. That's how much I mean it. So Reuben's going there with where he's coming back, or I'm dying with him. So that shows Reuben's commitment to this. And then Jacob says, he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone, which kind of hints it to the past. And then listen what it says here. If mischief befall him by the way in the which you go, then shall you bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. So, in the camp of Canaan, at the start of this chapter, it was at rock bottom. And at the end of this chapter, it's 2 steps lower. The reason being, at the beginning, there was at least a plan. Here was the plan. send the 10 spies, buy some grain, they all come back, and then live off of that, and then maybe send them back again. Now the whole plan is thwarted. Not only they got the grain, but they lost Simeon, and they can't get Simeon back unless he sends Benjamin. So now the food begins to dwindle. We're going to go into next week. How out of desperation Jacob has to finally concede. If we're all dead, it doesn't matter anyway, but it takes that. So the Lord is working his plan. So as we wrap up this week, let me close with the illustration that when things might seem the worst, put your trust in the Lord. And maybe he be using what you perceive as the worst possible thing as indeed the very way the Lord's working out his plan. Now that doesn't mean that's not always the case. There could be something foolish we're doing, that's obvious like the Lord's not into. But if there's something that's completely out of your control and you've been praying about something and it seems like in answer to prayer, instead the exact opposite is happening and occurring, just trust that the Lord's working here. Here Jacob is sitting there. Just let's go with our closing scene and remember this next week when we return. There's Jacob sitting around. Now instead of 12, which he originally had, then it was 11. Now it's just 10 sons. They have the grain that Joseph gave them. They probably have one pile, all the money that they had to pay for it in case they track them down and find them. And the grain is shrinking each day. And with each day is more desperation. What next? Remember Jacob's term, all is against me. And how that's going to come around and say, no, Jacob, all was for you. So we'll wrap it up with that this week. So I'm trying to go basically about a chapter a week because there's a lot of details in each of these chapters. And it's a little too much for two, so we'll close out here and go with chapter 43 next week. Anyone have any questions or comments about that? Just a great story of Jacob and Joseph, and we'll all don't forget Joseph too. As he sits there, just imagine each day probably has some nice, lives in probably some mansion where he can view the people coming from all directions, and he probably sits there each night, looks in the direction of Canaan and looking for a caravan with them coming back. And so he patiently does his work in the day and waits for them to come for God to fulfill his plan. Now Joseph, he has to live by faith too. He doesn't know they're coming but he does know in a sense that he has the Lord's promise. And that's what we have to do. All right, let's close in prayer. Lord, we thank you for this lesson today. Thank you for this great story, and help each and every one of us as we are waiting for something in each of our lives, that you're working behind the scenes, and that maybe the thing that may be the absolute least likely that we would think would happen is working out the best thing for us. We pray that you bless our service today. In Jesus' name, amen.